Ryan Gosling arrived on set just as the morning light began to soften the harsh edges of the sprawling film production. The atmosphere was electric, yet chaotic. Technicians fine-tuning the lighting, production assistants hustling to position equipment, and cables snaking across every available surface. In the midst of all this orchestrated frenzy, one figure moved quietly, almost invisibly. Evelyn, an elderly black custodian, whose presence was as constant as the hum of the generators powering the set. For years, Evelyn had been a silent witness to the relentless demands of a film production. Dressed in her faded green uniform and carrying a well-worn cleaning cart filled with mops, pails, and cloths, she moved from one corner of the set to the next. No one paid her much mind. To the bustling crew, she was simply part of the scenery, a necessary, yet overlooked cog in the grand machine of movie-making. But every day, Evelyn endured not just the physical labor of keeping the set in order, but also a series of subtle and overt humiliations that chipped away at her dignity. On this particular day, the set was in full swing. The director, Mr. Harding, a man with a booming voice and an air of arrogance, barked orders relentlessly. His frustration was palpable, especially after a shipment of props had arrived late. "Where's the efficiency?" he roared at anyone who dared to look his way. "This isn't a vacation. Get it together." His words, sharp and cutting, left a trail of silent fear among those who worked under him. Evelyn, whose face bore the gentle lines of a life filled with quiet strength, moved steadily along the periphery. She swept up spilled coffee, wiped down glossy surfaces, and collected stray items with practiced calm. Yet, her work was often met with disdain. Today, as she bent down to pick up a fallen prop, a prized piece of set decoration, Mr. Harding's voice sliced through the air. "Evelyn, how many times do I have to tell you? That prop was worth a lot of money. Do you know how expensive it is to replace these things?" His tone was accusatory and laced with bitterness. Evelyn's eyes lowered as she gathered the broken pieces, her face betraying a mix of shame and resignation. She had long since learned that any attempt to explain the inevitable mishaps of manual labor was futile. The crew glanced her way with indifferent pity. Some even snickered quietly. Mr. Harding's tirade continued, his words piling on like heavy stones. "You're always slowing us down. Maybe if you paid more attention, we wouldn't have these problems." As the director stormed off, his expensive shoes echoing ominously on the set's polished floor, Evelyn remained rooted in her duty, trying to ignore the sting of his cruelty. It was in these moments, when her world seemed to shrink into silence and humiliation, that something unexpected began to unfold. From the edge of the set, partially obscured by shadows and the clutter of equipment, a figure observed everything with quiet intensity. Ryan Gosling, known to many as a Hollywood icon, had been wrapping up a scene when he noticed the commotion. His eyes, usually so attuned to the glamour of the industry, had now settled on Evelyn, the invisible woman who bore the burden of endless disrespect. Ryan's heart clenched at the sight, the way Mr. Harding's words had cut into her, the silent tears that threatened to fall as she continued her work without complaint. Without hesitation, Ryan moved closer. His approach was deliberate yet gentle, a stark contrast to the abrasive manner in which the director conducted himself. As he passed by, the whispers among the crew grew louder, many aware that something significant was about to happen. Ryan's presence, calm and resolute, disrupted the normal order of the set. He stood before Mr. Harding, who was busy reviewing a script in his cluttered office, and without a word, Ryan's gaze swept over the entire area. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. "Enough," Ryan said, his voice steady and unyielding, drawing every eye to him. The director's head snapped up, his face twisting with indignation as he struggled to regain control. "What did you just say?" Harding barked, but his tone was now laced with uncertainty. Ryan continued, his words measured and clear. "No one deserves to be treated this way. Evelyn is not just a worker on your set. She is a person with dignity, and you will show her respect." The set fell into a stunned hush as Ryan's intervention rippled through the space. Crew members, who had long suffered in silence, exchanged glances, some filled with hope, others with quiet admiration. Evelyn, who had been focused solely on her duties, looked up in disbelief. For the first time in years, someone was standing up for her, challenging the oppressive authority that had made her feel invisible. Mr. Harding's face contorted with anger, and he attempted to retort, but his voice faltered under Ryan's unwavering stare. "I run this set," he spat, trying to assert his control. "You have no right," but Ryan cut him off firmly. "I have every right to demand that every person here be treated with the respect they deserve. If you can't do that, then you're not fit to lead this production." As the confrontation deepened, the air on set grew thick with tension. The crew began to murmur in agreement, emboldened by Ryan's courage. A few even stepped forward to share their own experiences of mistreatment. The change was palpable. What had been a day marked by routine humiliation was now transforming into a pivotal moment of solidarity and justice. Evelyn, still clutching the torn piece of fabric she had picked up earlier, felt a warmth spread through her, a small, defiant flame of hope in the midst of overwhelming darkness. In that moment, the invisible weight of her daily struggles seemed to lift just a little. Though Mr. Harding tried to recover his authority by storming off again, the damage was done. The crew no longer looked at Evelyn with pity. They looked at her with respect, their eyes mirroring the change that Ryan had sparked. As the day drew on, Ryan remained by her side, quietly ensuring that no one else was subjected to such cruelty. He spoke with crew members, gathered their testimonies, and set in motion a chain of events that would eventually lead to accountability and reform on the set. But for now, as the golden light of late afternoon bathed the studio in a soft glow, Evelyn continued her work, her spirit subtly lifted by the kindness of a man who saw her for who she truly was. In the silence that followed, as Ryan quietly offered a small, reassuring smile and helped adjust her cleaning cart, a new chapter had begun on the set. One where respect and compassion would no longer be optional, but a standard. A lesson that, even in the most demanding of environments, every life holds immeasurable value. After the heated confrontation, the atmosphere on set transformed in an instant. The once chaotic hum of the film production shifted to a tense, expectant silence as crew members exchanged uncertain glances. Ryan Gosling stood firm, his presence a beacon of quiet authority amid the storm of emotions. Mr. Harding, visibly rattled by the unexpected challenge to his command, retreated to his cluttered office, muttering bitterly under his breath. In that moment, the balance of power on set began to shift, slowly but inexorably, in favor of those who had long suffered in silence. Ryan moved deliberately through the corridors of the set, stopping to speak with crew members who had gathered in small clusters, their faces etched with relief and a newfound hope. "What happened earlier wasn't right," he said in a low, sincere tone, addressing a group of grips and assistants who had endured similar indignities. One older grip, his hands calloused from years of labor, confided quietly, "We've been treated like disposable parts. No one ever stands up for us." Ryan's empathetic nod and steady gaze reassured them that change was coming. He urged them to document their experiences and share their stories that had long been buried under the weight of fear and resignation. Meanwhile, backstage, Evelyn continued her work with quiet determination, even as her heart still pounded from the barrage of insults. The small note she had received, "You deserve more than this," was tucked safely in her pocket, a secret talisman that bolstered her spirits. Every time she glanced at it, she felt a flicker of validation. But now, with Ryan's intervention and the support of the crew echoing around her, that spark of hope began to grow into something stronger. Ryan knew that to effect real change, the issues had to be brought to light in a way that couldn't be ignored by the higher-ups. He discreetly approached Brenda, the teller who had earlier contributed to the humiliation, and gently asked for her perspective. "What do you really think about what happened today?" he inquired softly. At first, Brenda hesitated, caught between loyalty to her superiors and the dawning realization that her behavior had contributed to an injustice. After a long pause, she admitted in a trembling voice, "I always thought it was just the way things were, that my job was to be efficient, not compassionate." Ryan's words, kind yet firm, encouraged her to consider that respect was not an optional extra, but an essential part of human dignity. Emboldened by her confession, a few other crew members joined in. A camera operator spoke of how he had witnessed several instances where similar mistreatment had been shrugged off as normal on set. The production assistant, whose eyes darted nervously at first, finally confessed that even he had been silenced by fear when derogatory remarks were made about the custodial staff. As their testimonies grew louder, a collective voice began to rise, a chorus of those who had long been marginalized finally speaking out. Ryan gathered these accounts, recording them on his phone, and vowed to bring them to the attention of the producers. With a sense of urgency, Ryan arranged a meeting with the film's key producers in a small, glass-walled conference room at the back of the studio. The atmosphere was charged. The producers, usually detached from the on-set conflicts, now faced undeniable evidence of systemic abuse. Ryan presented the recorded testimonies, the videos, and the personal accounts of crew members who had suffered humiliation at the hands of Mr. Harding and his cronies. "This isn't just about one incident," Ryan declared, his voice resonating with conviction. "It's about a culture of disrespect and inequality that has no place on our set, or anywhere." His words were met with a heavy silence, punctuated by nods and murmurs of agreement from several of the senior producers. One of the producers, a middle-aged woman known for her forthright manner, leaned forward and said, "We cannot ignore these allegations any longer. We owe it to everyone on this set to ensure they are treated with dignity." The meeting continued for hours, with heated discussions and a commitment to overhaul the existing policies. It was agreed that immediate disciplinary action would be taken, and Mr. Harding's behavior would be subject to a thorough investigation. The producers also pledged to implement new training programs focused on respect and inclusion, ensuring that every member of the team, from the lead actor to the custodian, was valued. Back on set, the changes began to take effect almost immediately. The oppressive air that had once shrouded the production started to lift as crew members observed the new policies in action. Mr. Harding was visibly sidelined, and his orders, once delivered with a booming, demeaning force, now came in a subdued tone as he was forced to answer for his actions. The crew, emboldened by Ryan's intervention, began to interact with one another more openly, sharing their experiences and supporting each other in ways they had not dared before. Evelyn, who had once been relegated to the background, found herself at the center of a small but powerful transformation. A few days after the meeting, the producers held a set-wide assembly to address the issues head-on. In that assembly, a senior producer personally apologized for the mistreatment that had been allowed to fester on set. "Today, we acknowledge that every person here, no matter their role, is essential," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "We will not tolerate any form of abuse or disrespect." The assembly was met with cautious optimism, and for many, it felt like a long-overdue vindication. As the production resumed under these new conditions, Ryan made sure to check in regularly with Evelyn. He visited her quietly during breaks, ensuring that she felt supported and valued. "You do more than just clean. You hold this set together," he would say, and his words brought a soft, hopeful smile to her tired face. Meanwhile, the crew continued to document the positive changes, and the story of the set's transformation began to spread beyond the studio. Industry insiders took note, and the narrative became a shining example of how accountability and compassion could reform even the most entrenched hierarchies. Through it all, Ryan remained the steady force, a reminder that one person's courage could change the lives of many. His commitment to justice had not only reformed a single production, but had set in motion a ripple effect that promised to influence the broader film industry. In quiet moments at the end of long shooting days, as he sat alone with his thoughts in the trailer, Ryan would often reflect on the power of kindness. "Respect isn't given, it's earned," he mused silently, thinking of Evelyn and all those who had suffered in silence for too long. By the close of this tumultuous chapter, the set had been transformed into a place where every voice mattered. The legacy of that day, etched in tearful confessions, recorded testimonies, and the unwavering resolve of one compassionate man served as a beacon of hope. And as the cameras rolled and the production moved forward, the promise of a better, more respectful future was no longer just a dream, but a reality that everyone on set could finally embrace. After the meeting, a new chapter began on the set, one marked by a palpable shift in both attitude and atmosphere. In the weeks that followed, the changes set in motion during that pivotal meeting gradually transformed the daily operations of the production. The once oppressive air of humiliation was slowly replaced with a cautious optimism, as every crew member realized that their dignity was finally being recognized. The film set, which had been marred by disrespect and cruelty, was now buzzing with a renewed sense of camaraderie and fairness. Mr. Harding's absence was notable. Sidelined by the decision of the producers, his former authoritative presence had been replaced by a new management team that prioritized compassion alongside efficiency. New protocols were introduced, including mandatory sensitivity training and regular feedback sessions designed to ensure that everyone, from the top brass to the support staff, understood that respect was not negotiable. Crew members who had once suffered in silence began to speak up, sharing stories of long-endured indignities that now, thanks to Ryan's brave intervention, were being addressed head-on. Evelyn, the quiet custodian whose work had long been taken for granted, emerged as a symbol of resilience. No longer hidden in the shadows, she received heartfelt thanks and words of encouragement from colleagues who recognized that her steadfast dedication was the foundation on which the entire production relied. Daily, she walked the set with a little more confidence, a small smile occasionally breaking through her reserved demeanor. Her cleaning cart, once a silent marker of her invisibility, now carried with it an aura of respect. Fellow crew members started offering to help her with heavy loads, and simple acts of kindness, an extra cup of coffee, a pat on the back, became frequent gestures that reminded her she was valued. Ryan continued to be a constant presence on set, not as an intruder or a hero in the spotlight, but as a quiet guardian of fairness. He spent his downtime talking with crew members, listening to their grievances, and offering advice where he could. He helped set up a suggestion box where anonymous feedback could be submitted, ensuring that even those too shy to speak publicly had a voice. Slowly, the entire production began to transform into a community that celebrated each contribution, regardless of one's role. Beyond the confines of the set, the impact of Ryan's intervention reverberated throughout the industry. News of the dramatic change on set spread via social media and industry publications. A local entertainment magazine ran a feature story titled "A New Era on Set: Respect, Compassion, and the Power of One," highlighting how one actor's resolve had inspired a revolution in workplace ethics. Influential directors and producers took note, and soon similar initiatives were launched at other productions, sparking a broader conversation about respect in the film industry. One evening, as the set prepared for a late-night shoot, Ryan found himself sitting alone on a quiet terrace overlooking the city lights. The hum of activity had dimmed, replaced by the gentle murmur of the night. He reflected on the series of events that had unfolded, a day that had started in anger and humiliation, and culminated in a quiet, powerful triumph of empathy. He remembered the tearful gratitude in Evelyn's eyes when she received a small note from him, a note that simply read, "You are seen, you are valued." That note had become a talisman not only for her but for many on the set who had long felt overlooked. Ryan's thoughts were interrupted by the soft steps of a colleague who approached him. "Mr. Gosling, may I join you?" the crew member asked respectfully. As they sat together, Ryan spoke of his belief that every individual had a story worth hearing, and that the strength of a community lay in its ability to uplift even the smallest voices. His words, delivered in a quiet, reflective tone, resonated with the crew member, who nodded in agreement. In the following days, Evelyn's role on the set continued to evolve. Recognizing her unwavering dedication, the new management promoted her to a supervisory position, ensuring that her experience and wisdom would be passed on to others. During a set-wide assembly organized to celebrate the changes, Evelyn was publicly honored. Amid applause and genuine smiles, she was invited to speak. Though her voice trembled at first, she shared her journey, from a life filled with hardships and invisibility to one where she now felt recognized and respected. "I always believed I was meant to be in the background," she said softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "But today, I realize that every part of this set, every person here, has a story that matters, and I am proud to be a part of that story." Her words touched everyone, and for a moment the set felt less like a workplace and more like a community, a family bound together by shared struggles and mutual respect. Ryan watched from the side, his heart swelling with quiet pride. He had not set out to be a savior, but rather a catalyst for change. And in that moment, as the camera lights flickered on for the next scene and the crew resumed their work with renewed energy, it was clear that the legacy of that tumultuous day would live on. In the weeks and months that followed, the film production continued with a transformed spirit. The values of respect, dignity, and empathy were woven into the fabric of every interaction. The story of how one actor's intervention had sparked a revolution became a cherished memory, a reminder that true leadership is measured not by power or authority, but by the courage to stand up for what is right, even when it means challenging the status quo. As the final scenes of the film were shot and the production began to wrap, the crew gathered for a small celebration. Under the soft glow of string lights and the gentle clink of glasses, they shared stories of the changes that had touched their lives. In that moment of camaraderie and quiet joy, Ryan Gosling's simple act of compassion shone as a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of empathy in a world that sometimes forgets to see the value in every single person. And so, as the lights dimmed on the set and the film's credits rolled, the legacy of that day lived on. The production had not only captured a story on film, but had also written a new chapter in the lives of those who had been once voiceless. Ryan, Evelyn, and the entire crew had learned that when we treat each other with kindness, every life becomes a masterpiece, a story of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of standing up for what is right.